Do you meet a lot of people on TikTok? Because I feel like I'm meeting people from all over the place and connecting with them and then staying connected, unlike any of the other social media sites ever.
Yeah, definitely. And I think for me, it feels like the conversation is going wider on TikTok than it is on other platforms. And people share so vulnerably and openly and just the small caption that they have, and we keep conversations going. It's really beautiful.
You're so right. They really are. Because I guess with Instagram, you're responding to somebody else, and with TikTok, you're answering them kind of back and forth. It makes it a little bit easier. I'm a, I don't know. I guess in the next few months, I'll be coming up on my year on TikTok. So I was excited too that you're there talking about a similar topic. So you are a TikTok creator. You're on there all the time, being very, very raw about something that's not so easy to talk about for everybody. But you were put into a medical menopause at 33 and then a surgical at 34. And you have found funny and humorous ways to connect with people so they understand that it's not just about age. Well, how did you decide to do that? First of all, because I feel like some people would say, oh my God, I'm not going to talk about that at all if they're 50, but you're doing that. And I have to imagine, you're one of very few people that are talking about that at such a young age.
Yeah, so I started mine on talking about it openly, I suppose, with people around me at work and getting the conversation going and being more comfortable around it. And that was really following a period of being really quite mentally unwell and thinking, actually, if I'm going to really go there, I need to go there for everybody and I need to be, real and authentic with it. And then I kind of had started to blog, kind of small blogs on Instagram, and that was around mental health and menopause and kind of merging as I was learning. And then TikTok has really been quite new for me. I've only been on there a few months. And I thought, okay, I felt like my vibe and audience were on there and I could, say what I wanted to and be really, cry one day if I want to and dance like a loony the next and kind of try and put the message out there.
Define what it is to be put into medical and then surgical menopause, because those are two different things, right? And I don't know that everybody knows the distinction between those.
Sure. So I was put into a medical menopause prior to my hysterectomy, and I was put onto a drug almost to switch off my ovaries so that would help to stop everything to make the operation tidy, as they said. And with that, it can be temporary. So it can, it is that almost switching off, and then you can have those switched back on again. It can cause after effects, but and the symptoms can be very much like a perimenopausal symptom, from what you can experience. With surgical menopause, if you are, you've had your ovaries removed, the estrogen is gone from your body and it's like, bam, there you are. So there's not necessarily a gradual build-up of symptoms that you may see in perimenopause where you'll get, we'll move through or they'll get worse.
Right.
It can hit, like it did with me, very, very suddenly and all at once. And there's no going back. You are in surgical menopause the minute you come out of that hysterectomy. Wow. So yeah, and that would be obviously for some women.
But you weren't warned about that. So what did did they assume that you knew what was going to happen when you had your ovaries removed? Did they just, or you came out of it and then or you just went into, how did that work? I don't even know the right question to ask.
I know. And
it's stunning.
And I get so cross at myself, and I always say to people now, and I've written about this, about, be curious. I was so curious throughout all of my operations. I'd had 18 operations before, but I think I was tired by that point. And I was just very trusting of what was going to happen. And I walked out of the hospital with, a box of HRT, which I was lucky to have because some women still don't get that. And a leaflet on how to poo properly. And I was like, right, okay, this is amazing. I'm going to be out of pain. And it was not really, it was sort of skirted around. There was no real support network. And I always say it was like I got the leaflet through the door, but never received the package. And
right.
The consultant's job essentially is to keep you safe in that operation. His job was to save my bowel, to remove the endometriosis, adenomyosis, to prevent me from the 3 cancers I was at risk at. There was all of that. So there was all that going on. So once I was gone, that was kind of it. But then there was no conversations around, what this will look like mentally, physically, societally, that HRT may not or may absorb. You know, I went 4 years with no absorption of HRT until recently. So I was estrogen deficient for all of that time, which has had a massive impact on my, on my health.
Of course,
so
of course.
Yeah, those conversations need to be much better, and it's two-way. We need to be more curious and ask the questions, and there definitely needs to be more support around hysterectomy care.
But people like you are helping people identify the questions, because I mean, that's no fault of your own. Like, I wouldn't know to ask that question. I didn't know to ask it when I turned, 49 years old and I was laying on the floor. I still was like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know. Maybe I'm stressed. So what were the cancers that you were at risk for? Let me ask you that, because was it endometriosis? Is that what you were dealing with? Or because you said it started at 19.
I had endometriosis since the age of 14, and I'd had cancerous cells removed from my cervix twice at age 16 and 17. And then I'd had numerous laparoscopies, and I'd had one ovary removed, and there was lots going on. I was at risk of endometrial cancer, cervical cancer, and ovarian cancer.
Oh my gosh.
Is what they said.
Oh my gosh. And I mean, how are you doing today? I want to ask that.
Yeah, I'm doing good. I've had a HRT implant, which has been a long old road to try and get, which is an estrogen implant that goes in for 6 months. It's known to be really effective for surgical menopause. They're very hard to get in the UK, but I now have that. I'm about 6 weeks in, and I'm feeling, it's been really lovely to say I'm feeling well. The brain fog is still there. The memory is struggling. They said that could take a long time. I've been a long time without estrogen, but I'm less achy. I've got no hot flushes. I'm wearing a jumper.
I love it. It's fabulous.
And it's fluffy. Like before, I was
it's
just
the little things, right?
Yeah. And it's just nice to have a little bit more energy and feel like, right, okay, now, it's been a rough ride, but now everything seems to be coming together at just the right time. So.
Oh, Victoria, I'm so happy to hear that. I really am. And I just wish you so much more in terms of health and happiness. How do you feel? I mean, it's a very young age, and I know that there are hurdles to go through when you're 48, 49, 50, 51 years old going through it, which is an average age. You are almost 20 years before that average age. So how do you feel about it? Do you feel like you've found a support group and a network to be able to talk to, or is it still isolating because of the age you are?
I think initially it was extremely isolating. I felt so alone, and I think not knowing that there was a community out there, because you don't realize what you're going through. I was never warned about surgical menopause. I had a hysterectomy. It was all very much about the hysterectomy. I was never warned about that. So I was in this world without realizing it. And I think that can be an incredibly lonely place. Whatever type of menopause you're in, I think until you realize, but finding a community online has just been a blessing. I think having a collective voice around it is, amazing. The surgical menopause community, the perimenopause community, and of course, POI, premature ovarian insufficiency as well. Connecting with people more my age and my vibe and younger. I talk to women from their teens. So it makes you feel less alone. I think societally though, it still feels like we're outside the box, because all of the conversations are very much around midlife or around, the faces of menopause are doing, amazing things, but we're kind of in the corner like, hey, we're still here in our 20s, 30s and younger.
Sure. So let me ask you a question. For people out there who may be in a similar situation, however they got to menopause, but if they did get there at a younger age, do you have some advice or something that helped you get through? Because you said you went through this very, very dark period and you've been able to turn that around. And not that I'm sure you don't have very difficult days still, but there is a way that you're relating to people and educating people and being humorous about it when you can be, and crying when you need to.
Yeah, I think the main thing is community, is find your community. There is a huge network of support out there, talking about it and really talk about how it shows up for you. This is something that your friends may not be relating to. My friends didn't, they're not there yet. And it is a constant reminder. It can be exhausting. So you kind of have to really journey a little bit within yourself. You know, there's a lot that comes with it. It can be grief, it can be loss, it can be living a life that you never thought that you would have. Maybe you intended to have children and maybe that's been taken away from you. And I think it's reconnecting to what your new purpose is. And, you know, that does come. It really does come. It takes time, and it takes all of the jigsaw pieces, the HRT, or, you know, the general well-being and the movement and the good, you know, good food and fueling your body. But I think it's connecting with what you want in your soul. And that, I definitely believe, comes with menopause, whatever age, you know, rather than an age thing. It's kind of like you're stepping into this wisdom and kind of hold on to that you're going to find this purpose and this path that maybe you didn't realize, but it will be extraordinary nonetheless.
Let me ask you that. Well, how has your path been, and where did you think you were going versus where are you going now? Because I know you have a plan. So what is that? What do you feel like has changed for you?
Yeah, I think the biggest change, I mean, I had to grasp the concept of not having any more children. I'm lucky enough to have had two, because my gynecological story started at the age of 14. So by 19, I was told you need to have children now. And it was like, well, so I did that, and very blessed. But yeah, so once I sort of navigated, right, that'll be the end of that era. I did try to, you know, obviously I went through that very dark period, and I started to ask my questions, you know, what fills me with joy? What do I want to do? How do I reduce mental symptoms like stress and anxiety, depression, and bring in what really lights me up? You know, and I was just there kind of trying to be creative in quite a corporate job, you know, doing my best, but kind of just thought, there's something else. And for me, it was connecting to writing, creativity, and just being a bit silly and bringing in that joy, but also helping people. And I think, you know, people say, you know, how can you talk so openly or be so vulnerable? And I don't know, it's just connecting that's part of who I am, but I also understand that not everyone has that voice yet or feel like they can. So it was kind of bringing all those together to go, right, let's do something and push the boundaries a bit and you know, create something to help people, which is now what I'm doing.
Well, you're certainly leading by example. Your favorite part of TikTok? What kind of videos do you like creating? What is your content creating du jour? What do you like to do?
Oh, I do love a trending dance. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
I mean, the embarrassment factor for my children is hilarious. So yeah, I don't have a strategy. I really just I wing it. I just see something and words will connect to a video or a song, or it gives me a feeling and I think I'm going to create that and I'll do that. But I also love responding to people's questions. That's what I really love about TikTok, kind of over some of the other platforms, is that you have that ability to respond there and then. You can be, you know, looking rubbish in your car, just woken up, and you can just do it. And it just feels like you're having a conversation with somebody and they're over the other side of the world. It's
well, and you also you're right. It can do it for anywhere. And I feel like it kind of goes away. Like it sits in your feed, but it doesn't sit there and haunt you. You know, it's not like big and glossy, and it just kind of goes down the feed and goes away. So I'm like, oh, that was a rough day, but whatever. It's gonna, you know, there'll be 5 other good days. Do you get one question in particular? Like I get a lot of reaction to you know, different symptoms, obviously. Are there certain questions you get in particular because of your age and because of the fact that it was a medical to surgical menopause that you think maybe vary from some of the other creators out there? Because there's a lot of doctors out there, and we're not, you know, I'm not a medical professional. I'm just, you know, I've done so much research about it. I feel like I should have gone to medical school now for it.
Me too. It's amazing how many people ask you medical stuff, and I'm like, I literally dance in my kitchen.
I was like, I have to tell you, I'm not a doctor, but
yeah, I get a lot of questions around how to advocate to the GP because women are constantly kind of batted down with you're too young. So I help those people kind of take along and make sure they've got something to take along with them, whether that's the, you know, British Menopause Society guidelines, you know, a list of symptoms, take a friend. So giving that sort of help, really. The other biggest ones that I get is always about low libido, so much. And also around kind of, just feeling like they don't want to feel alone. and, you know, that their friends don't get it, and how do they navigate the conversations at work and in friendship groups.
Yeah, low libido's become finally a big part of the conversation, actually, because I think a lot of people, nobody really wanted to, like, who wants to admit that? And I'm sure that, especially when we're talking about a different age, there's an expectation, right? So, what advice do you give them about that? I'm curious, because I know that it's one that's crept up on my feed now. Originally it was like hot flashes, hot flashes, but low libido's it's a real thing. It's not a ha.
Definitely not. And I think the misconception that testosterone will be, you know, the quick fix kind of, I kind of squash that straight away. It's just part of the jigsaw.
Good.
And that's if you can get it in the UK. But
did you try I was going to ask you, can you get testosterone in the UK? Oh,
you can. It just depends where you are, which doctor you see. So it's a little bit hit and miss. So I would start with I always invite the conversation over to a message, because I think it's sometimes very difficult to caption in such a small space, because with low libido, there's so many multifaceted kind of layers. So, you know, and I'll share a little bit about myself. You know, if you've gone through something like a hysterectomy, that may be following, again, some sort of grief. You may have had cancer. Like me, I had endometriosis, 20 years of pain. So there's a lot of trauma and energy there that is storing. And so it's not just a quick fix of, I'm going to put some testosterone on and hey, off we go. So it's kind of unpicking that. And, I did some work with a coach around it, actually, and it was really all about self, right, before you even get to connecting to the other person. So I really start there. We'll have a few questions. And I would say, you know, it's about self-pleasure. It's about reconnecting to what lights you up now, because that's not necessarily the same as what it was, whether you're in any type of menopause. Yeah. And, you know, kind of just exploring with yourself again, exploring pleasure and practicing. Like, it's work. It's not going to come easy. I've definitely found that, but it does happen. And the more you practice, the more kind of, you know, you get going. Yeah. And then, of course, communication with whoever you're having fun with.
You know, you have been able on TikTok to form some incredible relationships, I think, with women in midlife and menopause. So they're older. Have you learned anything from them? And what have you taught them, more importantly?
Yeah, it's definitely both ways. I think I definitely learn from I learn that age, as much as at times we can feel quite different, we are so connected and so similar. And I definitely feel like there's a theme of this wisdom, this kind of vibe of reckoning, which I love. I've learned so much off of doctors, and I love that there's medical professionals on TikTok, and that people are just willing to go there with the conversation. I think it's really bridging the gap, and I think we need to bridge that gap between kind of through the different age ranges right through to kind of the teens that are almost ready to have this conversation and learn it. And then I feel like I've taught them maybe to open their lens a bit more, because sometimes we can sit within our own box and sit with our own people, but actually I think it's interesting when you say, oh yeah, well, I'm here at 33, or, oh, I know somebody who's 22, and they'll go, what? And I think just widening that lens just makes us a little bit more empathetic to what each other are going through.